Hello and welcome to the webinar, Reimagining the Oberammergau Passion Play After the Holocaust, co-hosted by the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum and the Washington National Cathedral. My name is Rebecca Carter-Chand, and I am the director of the programs on ethics, religion, and the Holocaust at the Holocaust Museum here in Washington, D.C. You can learn more about our work and view recordings of past programs like this one at www.ushmm.org/PERH. I want to thank Friedrich Mayet and the Oberammergau Passion Play for giving us permission to show a few images today. And before I say a bit more about today's program, I would like to invite my colleague, Michelle Dible, to bring greetings from the Washington National Cathedral.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I understand there are folks here from many places, so just a brief welcome. I bring greetings from Dean Randy Hollerith and our Canon Missioner Leonard Hamlin and the Cathedral family. We are incredibly pleased to be invited to be part of this extraordinary project and to, as always, partner with the Holocaust Memorial Museum for the incredible work that they do to help educate and sustain conversation that is so desperately needed in today's world. So grateful to be here and looking forward to today's conversation. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thanks, Michelle. So the Holocaust Museum seeks to help people understand how and why the Holocaust happened in all of its complexity. And an important element certainly is the long-standing and deep-seated anti-Judaism of European Christianity. So a lot of our work here at the programs on ethics, religion, and the Holocaust addresses this long legacy and how it affected Christian theology, Christian clergy and institutions, and ordinary people as the Nazis came to power and pursued a vision of racial superiority, war, and genocide. Many people that we encounter at the museum, especially people of faith, are eager to reckon with this difficult history, but they always want to know, how did things change after the Holocaust? And what can we do today in response? And these are exactly the questions that we will explore in today's webinar. The Bavarian village of Oberammergau has produced a passion play every 10 years since 1634. It has a fascinating history, which you can read all about on the play's website and in many publications. For much of its history, the play reflected and promoted negative portrayals of Jews and Judaism. But in recent decades, in the shadow of the Holocaust, the play has undergone significant changes, and its creators continue to be in dialogue with representatives from the Jewish community and Christian scholars and leaders. So the story that we will hear today is largely a positive one, but these laudable transformations did not happen automatically, nor did they happen right away after the end of the Holocaust. Many people have contributed to this process, from those who were involved in the Second Vatican Council, which shifted the Catholic Church's theological orientation towards Jews and Judaism and repudiated anti-Semitism, to those involved in interreligious dialogue and theology, and to those who've contributed scholarly research on the churches during the Holocaust. So today we will hear from two individuals who are particularly well positioned to walk us through this story. Peter Pettit, Reverend Dr. Peter Pettit, is the teaching pastor at St. Paul Lutheran Church in Davenport, Iowa. He has many years of experience in Jewish-Christian relations, including 20 years as the director of the Institute for Jewish-Christian Understanding at Muhlenberg College in Pennsylvania. He was the founding chair of the Centers for Christian-Jewish Relations, the CCJR, in the early 2000s, and he's also been involved in the International Council of Christians and Jews and in interfaith relations within his own denomination, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. He currently serves on the academic advisory group on the Oberammergau Passion Play, which is convened by the American Jewish Committee. Our second panelist, Christian Stückl, is the director of the Oberammergau Passion Play, a position that he has held since 1987, which means this is his fourth production as director. As a native of Oberammergau, Stückl has been involved in theater in Bavaria for decades. He's also the artistic director of the Münchner Volkstheater and regularly directs other plays in Oberammergau. He has won many awards, but I want to highlight in particular some recent honors he has received for his work in Jewish-Christian relations and promoting pluralism and tolerance. The Abraham Geiger Prize from the Abraham Geiger Rabbinical Seminary at the University of Potsdam in 2020, the Buber Rosenzweig Medal by the German Coordinating Council in 2021, which is an umbrella organization of Christian Jewish groups in Germany, the Tolerance Prize of the Evangelical Academy of Tutzing in Bavaria in 2022, and just last month, the Isaiah Award from the American Jewish Committee. So clearly, a lot of people are paying attention to this play's development and Christian's leadership. We are so honored to have our two distinguished guests with us here today to explore the significance of the Oberammergau Passion Play and how it has been reimagined over the years. As we go through our webinar, I invite you to submit your own questions in the Q&A function here in Zoom, and we hope to have some time to address at least a few of them toward the end of the webinar. We will be going until, for an hour and a half. That's 1:30 Eastern time, or half past the hour from wherever you are. And with that, I would like to jump right into a series of questions that I have prepared for Peter and Christian. And I'd like to start with you, Peter. And wondering if you could just sort of set the stage, so to speak, and tell us about passion plays in the Christian tradition more broadly.
Thanks, Rebecca, and thanks so much for the invitation to be a part of this webinar and to have the opportunity to be here on the panel with Christian. Passion plays are a form of drama that presents the story of the last week of Jesus' life. They typically begin with his final entry into Jerusalem, and they carry on through that final week of his life with all of the events that take place. That passion story has been understood by scholars for many years as perhaps the kernel of the Gospels that we have in the Bible. And it certainly is the focal point, and it gets the most text in the Gospels of all the weeks of Jesus' life. Nobody's really clear about exactly how passion plays originally developed. We have very few scripts or accounts from the very earliest days in the Middle Ages when these started to appear. But by the high and late Middle Ages, there were as many as 400 of them being performed around Europe at any given time. They likely grew out of liturgy and things like the Corpus Christi procession, where the dramatization, the presentation of the Christian story would be made available to a community that was, for the most part, illiterate, and for whom this kind of dramatic presentation, similar to the stories told in stained glass windows in the churches and cathedrals, that would have been those would have been the textbooks or the ways in which the story was passed along. In America, there have been three particularly notable ones in Union City, New Jersey, beginning in 1914, and it continues. In Spearfish, South Dakota, from 1939 through 2008, ran for over 10,000 performances before ceasing production after the founders died, and the energy to continue it faded. And also still in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, with a play that began in 1968. So we've seen the form move from Europe to North America, in some cases in some pretty spectacular ways, but certainly the one that stands at the center of the tradition historically today remains the one in Oberammergau.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's especially interesting about the American connection. But I want to turn to Christian and ask about the very specific and very long history of the Oberammergau Passion Play. Christian, what is the significance of the Oberammergau Passion Play? And before I allow you to answer, I do want to mention to our audience members that Christian has brought along an interpreter today. You may hear some German or some English, and I'm sure the interpreter will be able to translate everything into English. So please, Christian, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, my English is very bad. I think in the first time of the Passion Plays, it was really like a propaganda by the Catholic Church. Our first director, or the second director, we know his name. He wrote in a diary, Passion Play. Passionsspiele sind das einzige, mit dem man die dumme Landbevölkerung den rechten Glauben beibringen kann.
So passion plays were the only way to bring the story of Jesus to the dumb farmers of the countryside.
So in this form, the first 200 years, it was totally in the hand of the Catholic Church. It was a Catholic play, so we have no Protestants in our village. It was only a play by the Catholics, and the priests do it for the small audience around. Later, in the middle of the 18th century, it becomes more popular, and in the 19th century, it becomes more popular, and since 1850, we can say not only the audience from the region come into Oberammergau, a lot of people come, and it starts in 1880 with one man from England comes to Oberammergau, the Reverend Thomas Cook. He is also the Passion Play, and he say, if you build a theater, if you build a big theater with an audience hall, then I make a marketing event. I bring people to Oberammergau, and from this time, I think from 1880, it starts more and more people come to Oberammergau, and it grows more and more, and I think it's an important Passion Play in Germany.
Thank you. So we have passion plays at the very local level, in many different Christian contexts, certainly in America. And I think this international aspect of Oberammergau since the 19th century is also really important. Just another reminder for our audience members, please do submit your questions as you think of them into the Q&A, and we'll be monitoring that as we go along. I wanted to bring it into the 20th century, though. You mentioned the changes in the 19th century and the building of the theater. But moving into the period that we focus on here at the Holocaust Museum, of course, there's a famous episode in the special 1934 play when Adolf Hitler and a number of other leading Nazi officials went to see the play in 1934, which was the special 300th anniversary production. And Hitler, when he saw it, praised the play. And the famous quotation that people often reference is, he said that never has the menace of Jewry been so convincingly portrayed. And he also approved of the play's portrayal of Pilate, whom he thought was shown to be superior, quote, in race and intelligence. And after that experience, the National Socialist Propaganda Ministry really promoted the play that year, both in Germany and abroad. So a sort of continuation of that, promoting the play both locally and in Germany and especially in the English-speaking worlds. The 1940 production was canceled due to the war, and the next performance was in 1950. And at that time, in the direct aftermath of World War II and the Holocaust, there were criticisms of the play being very anti-Semitic. And so I just wanted to ground our history in that, because it's really what happens after that point that I really want to dig into a bit more. So Christian, if I can turn to you again, and you know, given that the play for many generations was very anti-Semitic, but changed in recent years, can you tell us about some of those changes that have happened since the end of World War II?
Yeah. First, I have to go a little bit back. Hitler was there in 1930. So we have a regular special play. He was there with Goebbels, with Gilly. He really likes a special play. And together with the mayor and the play director, Oberammergau, it comes to the idea to do
an additional fashion play
for 1934. And in this year, he says the fashion play is Reichswichtig, important for the German Reich. It was really, I say, yes, before he makes it from a Catholic propaganda to a Nazi propaganda. And the play director in 1934 er hat gesagt, wir sind sehr stolz, das antisemitische Spiel zu haben.
So the play director from 1934 said that they're very proud of having that anti-Semitic play here in Oberammergau.
Yeah, and after the Second World War, nobody likes to hear Reichswichtig. Nobody likes to speak. Even my grandfather, the generation before us, nobody likes to speak about this time. Mostly you hear only. We take the Bible and we play the Bible. So the Bible is if the Bible is anti-Semitic, then you can find also anti-Semitic terms in the Passion play, but it belongs to the Bible. It was very difficult to speak about the anti-Semitism, and we are the first generation. We can, after the Second World War, we can speak.
You could speak more freely
about these terms. The Passion play has a big structure. We have 14 scenes in the Passion play, starting with. It starts with the entrance in Jerusalem. It ends with the crucifixion on the end and the resurrection. And between every scene, a choir is coming to the stage and shows us a picture from the Old Testament. And in this, it's a long tradition. We do it until today in this form. We show before we show a scene of the life of Jesus, we show a scene of the Old Testament. For example, in the Mountain of Olives, Jesus says, please stop this way of God, please let's go away this pot, or Peter.
Let this cup pass from me.
Yes, and like Jesus, we have Moses in front of the burning bush. So we have almost a picture of the Old Testament and a picture of the New Testament. And in these pictures, I and Otto, who were my dramaturg in this time, we found the most anti-Semitic terms. For example, the third picture was an unknowing story. King Ahasuerus sends away his wife Vashti and takes a new wife, Esther. And in the words after showing these pictures, the prologue says, and it's the same like what God is doing with the synagogue. God sent away the synagogue and takes the church to his new wife. And we have a lot of pictures about Joseph and his brothers. Joseph is almost the whole time
Joseph is like an idol to look up to
Jesus. We look, and the 12 brothers are for Jewish people, for the Jewish crowd, for Jewish, and almost in the pictures you can hear, von diesem Volke spricht der Herr, habe ich sein Wohlgefallen mir.
So you could see through the pictures that God might be saying, I don't sympathize, I don't like this people anymore.
And so you have the most anti-Semitic terms we have in the living tablets. And in 2000, we take out all this bad and try to find new pictures. We wrote new text, we wrote a new music, we changed nearly all pictures, all old pictures, and taken new pictures. But also in the colors on stage, you can find not only in the text, also in the colors. For example, Judas has a yellow dress. Since the last 200 years, he is a yellow dress. You know, yellow is the color we...
the Jewish star.
Yeah, and the menorah. The menorah is in the room where Caiaphas says Jesus has to be died. And so we take out the menorah from the room of Caiaphas and give it to the place where Jesus is sitting in the Last Supper. And I speak with my actors the whole time to make it clear it's not a story. The first Christian
Holy Communion.
Huh?
It's not the first Holy Communion, the first Eucharist.
Yeah, it's not the first, and the whole play is not a play about the first Christians by the Jewish. So it's a total inner Jewish story. We have our roots in the Jesus is a Jew, disciples are Jew, Mary is a Jew, and he never go to the Holy Communion. Communion. And he maybe he goes to the bar mitzvah, and so it changed a lot. Peter have seen it, so maybe you can tell also some points.
Sure, thanks, Christian. The background to what Christian is talking about is in the way in which the play has always been structured in its dynamics. And James Shapiro, in his book about Oberammergau, he's a theater critic from Columbia University, and he says it was a classic revenge play where the hero is harassed and oppressed all through the play. And then at the end, the great catharsis, the great culmination of the play is the hero gets revenge on everybody who has persecuted him. And we can see this actually in the 1930 play. We have an image of the resurrection scene. So this was 1930, the climactic scene. And you can see how, you know, Jesus being worshiped by all the angels but has all these people in front, and there are other years in which the Sanhedrin, the High Council, was actually prostrate on the floor, just crushed on the stage, because Jesus had his revenge and his victory over them. This is how we can. This is how it could become the kind of propaganda that Christian talks about, because it's Catholic victory over the world and maybe even over Protestants. It's certainly Arian victory and revenge over the Jews, the High Council, Caiaphas and the High Priest and the Sanhedrin. And so that really gave the background to this. And it was in the tableau, the living images, that the contrast was also very clearly present. So what was shown from the Old Testament, from the Tanakh, was a way in which Israel either got it wrong or was lesser. And then the narrative story about Jesus shows how he gets it right or is better, the perfecting of that. So this whole contrast between the them and the us is the dynamic of the play structure generally and the tableau vivant in particular. And that's really what has been transformed as Christian and his designing team and his musicians have gone not to say, that was bad, this is good, but rather, just as God treated Israel well and loved Israel and cares for Israel and supports Israel, so still God continues to care for and love and support those who know God through Jesus. I think that's what you're trying to do, right, Christian?
Maybe.
Well, I do think this is a very important point for our audience, that these changes have not just been a matter of, important as they are, removing the very specific negative Jewish stereotypes that Christian alluded to, but it's more than that. It's really, as you said, you redid the music and the script and the costumes and really rethought it. And it's also about the relationship between the Old Testament and the New Testament, and the place of Israel in the longer arc of Christian history. So I just wanted to highlight that for our audience. Now, I know that this year is your fourth time directing, Christian, but you've been involved in the play, I think, for most of your whole life. How has it been this year? What has been the reaction to the changes of the 2022 production? I know it was delayed a bit because of the COVID pandemic. What has been the reaction in the church locally in Bavaria and international audiences too, if you have a sense of that already?
Yeah, it's difficult to tell. In the time I was the first time director in 1990, it was very hard to bring it to the city council, to the Catholic Church, that we have to do a lot. So it was a very, very steiniger Weg.
It was a hard path that he has walked.
And I have to fight on so many different points. I have to fight with the Catholic Church. I have to fight with the city council. I have to fight with my actors. So in the past, my actors, nobody thinks about the story, and I say the whole time we have to think in a new way. So I start in 1990 my rehearsals in Israel. I take my 40 main actors, and we go for 2 weeks to Israel and start to go the ways of Jesus from the Lake of Galilee to Jerusalem. We walk the whole things. We speak a lot about Jesus. We speak with different rabbis to see what our Jewish people think about Jesus. So it was a long discussion. Even in the last play, I say there is one scene. Jesus beats out the merchants of the temple, and he says, "This is a house to pray." And I say, if he says it's a house to pray, then we have to find a moment. And now he opens the Torah, and I teach all my actors to do the Shema Israel. To sing together. My composer works on the music. We take the words and bring it into music. So this is this was a very difficult way, even with the Catholic Church, because it's the first time I have a theologischen Wachhund.
And like a theological watchdog.
The whole time was a man, a theologian behind me. He says the whole time, please be careful. Er hat gesagt, wir dürfen uns nicht von Juden die Bibel zerschreiben lassen.
So what he said to Christian was, we cannot allow the Jews to rewrite the Bible for us.
And I say the whole time, sorry, we do the Passion Play, we take out of 4 Gospels different lines. It's like a potpourri. So we can also say this sentence or this sentence is not inside if the sentence is difficult. So I have to fight on different ways. But now in 2020, the Catholic Church and even the city council in Oberammergau and even the actors believe in my work, and so it's easier, and I can speak in a total different way. So now we have one moment. I say to all this year you have to wear all kippas. Jesus and the disciples, the people say yes, all are Jews, and so it's changed also in the mind of the actors. Oh my English.
That's fascinating. Peter, I know, oh yes, Peter.
I was just going to say, I mean, if you want one very easy image to talk about the transformation that Christian has been able to undertake, we have a screenshot from a Google search that I did of the Jewish Telegraphic Agency website. Christian, I don't know that you've seen this, but I just Googled Oberammergau review. What pops up are the 3 review articles from, I'm going to say, 1980 at the bottom, where Oberammergau is called the capital of religious anti-Semitism. In 2010, this was Christian's 3rd performance, Oberammergau Passion Play, better, but not good. And this year, the director of Germany's infamous Passion Play takes its anti-Semitic stereotypes by the horns. This is the kind of recognition for the work that's been going on that is out there. And it just struck me that on this one screenshot, you can really see the history of the transformation. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks. And Peter, I know that you've seen the play in different years over time. And so I was wondering if you have anything to add about this transformation.
Yeah, as an audience member, I think one of the things that I've appreciated most is the way that the chorus has changed. And the fact that the narrator, who was always there up until this year, this is the first year without the narrator, who's called the prologue. The chorus and the prologue were always telling the audience what the Christian meaning was of what was happening on the stage. And one of the things that Christian and Stefan Hagenayer, the designer, have been able to do is to really separate out the chorus's commentary from the very Jewish story going on the stage. The story on the stage is about an oppressed Jewish community that is occupied by brutal Romans. And Jesus dies because he gets caught in the wheels of the power in that first century world. The prologue, the narrator is gone. Thank you, Christian. he was the actor is a wonderful man. The character was a disaster. And the chorus is now very clearly separate from the action on the stage. So given the tradition of the chorus, they still say some things that are very much Christian theology, but they are now clearly interpreting for a later time what we're seeing happen on the stage. It's not inherent in the action that this is a Christian story somehow. And that's one of the things that struck me really strongly. The other thing is, and I actually saw this more in 2010, there's a moment when Jesus was standing on the stage with hundreds of people around him, Romans, Pilate, the Sanhedrin, supporters from the priests and the people. And Jesus stood on that stage and looked absolutely alone. He was a still figure with all of this going on around him. And it became clear to me as an audience member that I am in those crowds. And I also have to make choices about how I will respond to this very still figure who is calm, who is a presence. There are multiple options for how to respond being shown on the stage. Which one will I choose? That's a powerful moment because it doesn't make clear these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. It makes clear there's a figure. How will you respond?
And so you actually brought a group primarily from your church on a trip to Germany, and you went to see the play with them. What was the sort of American, or maybe you observed in other Americans in the audience? What was their experience like?
Yeah, a couple of comments. First of all, it was not just people from my church. We were also traveling with a Jewish colleague of mine from Jerusalem. And she has actually spoken with someone in Israel who has brought whole tours of Israeli Jews to the play. And for Jews in the audience, this moment that Christian mentions where Jesus raises the Torah scroll and hundreds of Oberammergau villagers playing first century Jews recite the Shema, chant the Shema Yisrael. It's a moment unlike anything anybody could imagine. I mean, we're in Bavaria, right? Anybody who knows the history of the Holocaust, knows the history of Nazi Germany, knows that, Bavaria of all places is not where you might expect hundreds of German Christians and Muslims to be chanting the Shema. So that's just a powerful, powerful moment. In my own group from here, one of the comments that struck me most strongly was, I've always known that Jesus was a Jew in my head. I never really understood what that would mean about what his community looked like, how he was a Jew in a Jewish place. I recognize the story, but it's never been told to me this way. A powerful sort of transformation in the perception. And I think the other thing that also was commented on, both positively and negatively, and Christian, you might want to speak to this, there is no resurrected Jesus in this play this year for the first time. Mary Magdalene is the focal point of the final scene as she announces that he is risen. I know that my Redeemer lives, she quotes her Bible. But it's Mary's testimony, it's Mary's witness to the resurrection that is the culmination now. And in many ways, I think that puts Mary back in her proper central place where all the gospel writers have her, but especially John, the gospel writer. But it also makes it clear that believing the resurrection is not about, well, John says this too to Thomas, it's not about seeing, it's about hearing and believing. And Oberammergau's play now brings us to that moment. Mary announces it. Will we believe it?
Yes, Christian, I'm very curious about your thoughts about this. Is that what you intended when you designed this scene for this 2022 production?
I have seen so many resurrections in my life, in different movies, in the theater, and mostly I think you couldn't show them. It's what you believe. You can believe it, but if you try to show the resurrection of Jesus, halt mir. Es schaut immer aus, wie wenn ein Mann im Nachthemd kommt.
When you try to show the resurrection, it always looks like a man is coming out of his pajamas. And they say, no, it's what we believe, what people believe. You couldn't show it, and I try since last year and this year more. In the Catholic Church, we have a tradition. Only the light is coming. Only the light is coming in the morning, in the Easter morning. The priest takes a candle, and then the light is coming to all. And it's in this way I like to show the resurrection.
So Christian, wondering if we can sort of zoom out again more broadly, and if I can ask you about what has been the impact on Jewish-Christian relations of these changes to the play. And actually, I might expand my question to be interreligious, because I understand that now you have a couple of Muslims who are a part of the production this year as well, which is a new thing for Oberammergau. But I think primarily, what has been the impact on Jewish-Christian relations?
Oh. 1910, a man from New York is coming to Oberammergau, a Rabbi Joseph Krauskopf, and he saw the Passion Play. He wrote a big an article about the Passion Play, and he says, you like to show us a story about love, but you bring hate with your story. You say you like to show us Jesus as a man who brings love, but you act against Jewish people. And I think I read this text, and I was total in, and I have the feeling we have to change all. It's for me, it's not so important what happened with the Jewish-Christian relationships. It was really deep in my. I have the feeling I have to work against all anti-Judaism in the play, and how it. Sometimes I have the feeling it's very difficult to bring it out of our heads. For example, in 1990, I think
I try to take away the sentence from Pilate, I wash my hand and I'm unguilty. I say I take it away, the text. I doesn't like this text, and I make only a picture. Pilate washed his hands, but without lines. And later, some people come to me and say, never before I heard the sentence in such a good way. So people, the audience saw the text as the scene, and in Köpfen
even though they didn't see it on the stage, they projected it into their memory of the scene.
And so in this way, I think we have to work a lot. And this Rabbi Krauskopf, he wrote, it needs more than 1 year, more than one generation to bring away all the anti-Semitic points in the head of the people. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I cannot say ich kann nicht sagen, was genau passiert, aber ich hoffe, dass es mit der Zeit alles verschwindet.
So I cannot say how much it has impacted the Jewish-Christian relation, but I hope that with time we can take away all the anti-Semitic stereotypes and everything out of the Passion.
But I think it needs time. It's in our heads, and we have to clean our heads.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, Peter, I know that you have been on the advisory group on this play convened by the American Jewish Committee, along with many other scholars and experts. From your perspective, what can we learn from this story in terms of Jewish-Christian relations?
Yeah, I think in many ways, perhaps the most fundamental learning from this is that change really can happen in the very local, this worldly society in which we live. There are people I saw recently, somebody who said, enough with the high-level statements from churches, of deploring anti-Semitism and apologizing for, and committing themselves. It's like we don't need the high-level statements anymore. And for the several decades I've been involved, there's a regular lament that those high-level statements never really get to the communities. As Christian says, people come to the play, and even without Pilate washing his hands on stage, people still remember that happened in the play because it's so much part of what they see. But they don't see it in Oberammergau anymore. They see Pilate with a dish of water that he handles very differently. They don't hear the self-cursing of the Jews about Jesus' blood anymore. There's a very different story that is being told in this iconic theatrical production. And while I think Christian is right, it will be decades, or, well, James Park said it would take 3 centuries to finally clear anti-Judaism out of Christian theology. But however long it takes, it can be done. It takes courage, it takes investment, it takes persistence. It doesn't happen overnight, but the Oberammergau Passion Play is not highfalutin theology. It's big drama, and 500,000 people are seeing it this year. They are seeing a different way of telling the Jesus story, and that makes a difference. So I take encouragement from it to try to make those same kinds of changes in my local setting as Christian and his partners have done in their local setting. I think that might be the biggest thing we can learn from this. That, and the fact that every telling of the Jesus story is chosen by the teller. As Christian says, we have 4 gospels. Those 4 gospel writers told the story differently. And while they all participate more or less in an anti-Jewish leaning of the story, they tell it very differently. And every time we tell it, we can't say, as the folks in Oberammergau once did, oh, I'm just telling the Bible story. No, the way I tell the story is my choice about how I tell the story. That's my responsibility. And the consequences also come back to my doorstep.
Mm-hmm. So Christian, you hinted at this a minute ago in a comment, but I'm wondering, given all of these changes, these positive changes that have been made, and we've been hearing about the latest production, is there more to be done? How will the next generation perhaps handle it? How will you handle it in future productions? Has this sort of been completed, ridding the play of anti-Semitism and rewriting the narrative arc, or is there more to be done?
I'm sure I'm not ready. So I'm not ready. I think really there are some scenes we have to think about the scenes again and again and to bring it on the right way. I think we are never on the right way. And Noah Marins, rabbi from New York, he says, you never get a kosher stamp for your work. Even he says, and we all together, we know we are never finished. And I hope the whole time, after 30 years I do it, I have to give it to the next generation, and I have to give it on to the next generation. And I'm very hopeful that the next generation takes it and do it, goes in a good way, the way. If I look back in the 1950s, 1960s, 70s, my grandfathers all are shouting against Jewish people and say, so people tried to disturb our passionately. And now we sit together. Noam comes some weeks back with 30 Jewish students, and even the Abraham Geiger school in Berlin comes with Jewish students, and we speak together, we laugh together, and I think this is important, that dass wir über das Passionsspiel diskutieren anfangen, dass wir uns über das Passionsspiel hinaus kennenlernen.
I think that's important, that we not only talk about the Passion Play, but that we get to know each other, even not talking about the Passion Play.
So I think Noam comes to Reimagau, and we have a long table, like the table for the Last Supper, and I take all the disciples on one side and the Jewish students on the other side. And it was really a great evening, and we speak about all different points. 2 boys are eating kosher, and so we have a lot of different discussions, and it was very good that we sit together. And I think this is important, that we speak together about so many things, and also about the Passion Play.
If I can add, I think this is one of the other crucial things to learn from Oberammergau. There were several decades when critics threw their criticisms at Oberammergau. And for the most part, what that did, they weren't wrong. They were right about the problems. But by just throwing their criticisms at Oberammergau, they really built up a resistance and a resentment about looking at the play and considering change. And what Christian has opened up, and with the partnership that he has built with Noam Marins, who came with a whole model of constructive engagement. Let's respect what Oberammergau is trying to do and help make it better. So the project is not an Oberammergau production looking for hashgacha, looking for the kosher stamp from a Jewish audience. It becomes much more a partnership where those who are implicated by the play have a place in the discussion about how the play is produced. And this is, Christian has done this in so many different arenas of the play. One can hardly, you mentioned the Muslim actors who are in it, and making sure that everybody who lives in Oberammergau is included. It's another thing to learn, is that if you want to make these kinds of changes, build partnerships of common interest and concern, rather than lobbing criticisms at one another.
Thank you both. We've received many really wonderful questions from our audience members, and I'm just looking through them now. I think this would be a good time to turn to some of those audience questions. And I'm going to sort of combine a few of them because a number of people have asked more about the people of Oberammergau and the actors and the other people involved in the production. One question from the audience is about how the town and the people have changed over the years, especially in post-World War II. And another person asked specifically, I think they've heard these stories about very strict rules traditionally about who was allowed to be an actor in the play. And then another person asks about were there ever any Jews who lived in the town of Oberammergau? And how were they involved or not involved in the play? So those are all sort of related questions about the people of Oberammergau. Let me know if you want me to repeat that. I know that was a lot, Christian.
Till 1990, we have a lot of rules. You have to be born in Oberammergau, you have to live there since 20 years, you have to be a member of the Catholic or the Protestant Church. For women, we have a special right. You have to be unmarried. So we have a lot of rules to be a member of the Passion Play. I say the whole time, the city of Oberammergau is the holder of the Passion Play, not the church. So I say 20 years back, you have to give freedom of religion. It's not important, is he a member of the Catholic Church, is he a member of the Protestant Church? It's only important that he's a good actor. So, and since this time, we have also Muslims or people who go out of the church, but never in the whole time we have, I think we have a Jewish people in the play, because the last I know who lives in Oberammergau was Max Meyer. He goes away from Oberammergau in 1938. So it's a long time back, and since this time we have no Jewish inhabitants.
Thank you. I think one of you, I think Christian mentioned that it's really your generation that is the first generation that was able to acknowledge the anti-Semitism of the play and start to think about that. And so an audience member is asking, like, why is that? Why didn't change happen right after World War II in the 1950s and 60s? Why did it take those decades longer? And perhaps Peter wants to weigh in on this sort of larger question as well.
Unsere Großvätergeneration
die konnte mit der eigenen Schuld nicht umgehen. Sie wollten nicht über ihre Schuld sprechen, sie wollten nichts erzählen und deswegen haben sie sich auch gescheut, sich mit dem offen auseinanderzusetzen.
Our grandfathers and fathers, that generation, couldn't handle the guilt. They just couldn't handle the guilt and therefore didn't want to talk about what had happened or discuss anything regarding the past. And I think that's the reason why nothing happened, changed earlier.
Everybody thinks we like to come back to the old passion play, and we have not to speak about this. And I grow up in a restaurant. We have a table for permanents for old men who come every evening into the restaurant, and I like it as a boy to sit behind the permanents, the people on the table. And I have the most, if I ask, in 1970, it comes out a book by the American Jewish Committee about the anti-Semitic terms in the play. And I asked them, what is anti-Semitic terms in the passion play? And nobody was ready to speak about this. Everybody says, do it away, take the book away. We act only the Bible, the word of the Bible. We don't like to speak about anti-Semitic terms. So it was very difficult for this generation.
Now, you mentioned 1970, Christian. It's very interesting that it was 1965 when the Second Vatican Council adopted the statement Nostra Aetate, and in chapter 4, dealing with the Jewish community and the church's relationship with it, it says very explicitly that the blame for Jesus' death cannot be laid on all of the Jewish people of his day, and certainly not on Jews down through history. It's very interesting that in the 1970 playbook, in the introduction, that line is quoted by your theological advisor who writes the introduction. And he quotes that line from Vatican II and then says, he sort of doubles down on the theology. Of course, everybody is responsible for Jesus' death. Of course, we are all to blame. Anybody who looks at this play and doesn't understand that we are all responsible isn't understanding it. How could anyone think that this is about blaming the Jews? So that's there in the introduction to the playbook, but nothing changed on the stage. And I've heard you say, Christian, that we are all to blame makes for very bad drama. That it's hard to play out the we are all to blame on a stage. So it was very clear who was to blame in the production. And what you write in the forward, even if you quote Nostra Aetate, it doesn't really change what people are seeing. That takes the kinds of changes that have taken place more recently.
Yeah, if you're not be ready to change Judas, if you're not be ready to change Pilate, to change the high priest, then you show on the stage almost the same story. Then you can tell everybody is guilty, and but what I can see on the stage is almost the same. And I come back to the old stories, and so I really have the feeling you have to change the stories, and sometimes you have to also to confuse the audience to say what's going on. I hear it earlier in a different way. Why is it now so in this way? So you have to really to change in the play and to show the story in a different way.
Yeah,
it's not enough if you make a introduction in the textbook.
May I ask a question while you talk about those characters? Can you say more about Caiaphas and how he has developed and whether he will continue to develop? It seems to me he remains the figure who seems most interested among the Jewish leaders in dealing with Jesus. Is that still a problem?
I think Caiaphas is very hard to tell him in the right way. So I wrote a new scene. At the beginning of the Passion Play, I wrote a new scene. After the moment, Jesus beats out the merchant, and he prays on the place, Shema Israel. Pilate is coming, and Pilate says to Caiaphas, kill him, bring him away. I don't like to see this man. He is one of these religiösen Eiferern.
He's a religious fanatic.
And bring it away, bring him away. So Caiaphas is under the pressure of Pilate, and Pilate says, you have to kill him. And then you can take the sentence out of the Bible. If Caiaphas says, it's better that
better for one man to die for the people than that the whole people perish.
So in this moment, you can understand this sentence a little bit more, because Pilate says in front of this sentence, if Jesus is here and we get trouble, then I come with my soldiers and kill your whole people. So I give Pilate a total different part. But even Caiaphas comes back to
to the most religious points. He kind of comes back
and he has trouble also in this point with Jesus, because Jesus says, you are a bad priest, and he has to handle also with this. So I try to bring a second group inside the high priest. Ich habe die Fürsprecher ganz stark vergrößert, also die Fürsprecher im Monat.
So I try to bring forward the ones in favor of Jesus. I try to bring them forward more visibly for the audience.
So this is Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea and Simon of Bethany, who really affirm the criticism that Jesus is speaking against their leadership, because they see that there are problems with it.
Yeah, and I say the whole time in the Bible we have four names: Caiaphas, Hannas, Joseph of Arimathea, and Nicodemus. So nobody knows how it was in the time of Jesus. Maybe 50% are behind Jesus. Nobody knows, but the storytelling is different. So mostly the high priest, the whole group is against Jesus, and only some words on the other side speak for Jesus. But now we try to bring it. You have seen it. It's a different picture. But I think with Caiaphas we can work again and again.
Yeah. And it's interesting. If you think back to the movie of Jesus Christ Superstar, one of the early production numbers is of all the priests. They look like crows on a scaffolding, and they sing, "This Jesus must die." It's as they watch the procession into Jerusalem at the beginning of the Passion, and it's the priests who introduce the idea, "This Jesus must die." And what Christian has just described is that idea has now been transferred to Pilate, who is the first one to say, "This Jesus must die." And then the high priest is in a bind. But it's very difficult. Caiaphas is tough.
We have a few other questions from the audience along this vein of specific choices in the latest production. One person remembers that, in the liturgy that people would read on Palm Sunday, the congregation says, "Crucify him, crucify him." And are those specific lines still in the play this year?
Yes, this sentence is inside in the fresh play. We in front of Pilate, we have now. It's different like earlier. Now we have two groups on the place. One group is crying, "Crucify him," and one group is shouting,
defending him.
huh?
Defending him.
Yeah. So maybe it's a little bit difficult, but this scene is again there.
Mm-hmm. Another question about specific from someone who saw the play this summer and said that they were surprised when Jesus kissed Judas in the Garden of Gethsemane rather than Judas kissing Jesus. And they're asking, why was it done this way?
Now it's difficult to help me. Judas wird immer als Verräter gezeigt. Immer. Mit 30 Silberringen hat Jesus verraten.
So Judas is always shown as a traitor, or always shown as a traitor, and he was paid off with 30 silver coins.
And now we speak a lot with my, ich habe viel mit den Akteuren gesprochen und habe gesagt, vielleicht waren die beiden engste Freunde.
And so I talked and discussed with my actors and introduced the idea maybe Jesus and Judas were best friends, very intimate friends.
Weil Jesus hat ja Menschenkenntnis, warum hätte er einen Verräter in seine Zwölfergruppe genommen?
Because Jesus was a very good, he knew how to see characters and knew people who were nice and who were not nice. So why should he let a traitor into his his most inner circle?
Yeah, and on the end, Jesus says to him, Freund, was du tun musst, mach es bald.
So, and even being this great judge of character, Jesus, he still tells his friend Judas at the end, do what you have to do, but do it soon.
Yeah, and I think es war ein großes Missverständnis. Auch Kaiphas hat ihn gelockt, das zu tun, aber er bereut es so sehr und Jesus nimmt ihn bis zu dem Moment als Freund. Selbst in dem Moment, wo er ihn vielleicht verrät, bezeichnet er als Freund.
And so I think that it was a big misunderstanding. Caiaphas also tried to, pursue him or persuade him into doing it. And afterwards, he feels so guilty. I think Jesus, until the end, Jesus still called him a friend and saw him as a friend.
And maybe only one of the both Jesus do it. Frederick kiss him. The rest of the other Jesus don't like this.
From these questions, the very specific questions about the production, we can see that people come to the play with an understanding of the narrative already, if they have grown up in the Christian tradition and have read the gospel narratives. So I want to turn to Peter and ask, I think you've hinted at this a bit before with the idea of bringing groups to see the play. Presumably these are not clergy or biblical scholars, but just regular folks. How is it turn this experience into a teachable moment? What kind of potential is there? I think I remember Christian saying a minute ago, it doesn't matter much what I write in the textbook or the prologue to the book, but what matters is what people are seeing and experiencing as audience members.
I do think it's an eminently teachable moment. I think the group that was there this summer from here gained a lot. We didn't just come see the play. We had done some study beforehand. We had looked at the way that the Gospels, chronologically from Mark through John, increasingly shift the blame from Pilate to the Jewish leadership. So we did some of that critical study that makes it clear that the telling of this story does involve choices. And the gospel writers made choices in their day for their reasons, for good reason, but it's turned out to be bad news. So for us as contemporary Christians, how do we take this story, which has turned out to be bad news, certainly for the Jewish people over centuries, how do we restore to it the core message of God's love and care for all people, all the way out to the margins, and do it in a way that doesn't require that somebody is the villain, the oppressor, the antagonist over whom God gets revenge. I think if we can talk about the Gospels in that way, then, as one of our travelers said, when they see it on stage so differently, they are more ready to see what Christian and the people of Oberammergau are trying to show us. And it's a story very much about our own lives, our own time, our own challenges in following Jesus. It's not primarily about who was responsible back then, but it asks the question, how will I be a responsible disciple myself today? I think we can use it that way.
Which brings us to the future. And a few audience members have asked about what is next for the Oberammergau Passion Play. I know you are trying to get through the remainder of the shows for this year, and then you have a bit of a break. I know the play was postponed because of COVID for 2 years. Will the next one be in 2030, or will you wait until 2032? That is one question. And another person asks about the future in terms of the German language and printing the English in the book. Has there ever been talk of putting subtitles available rather than just in the booklet, or using other languages, or what has that discussion been like?
We have the same situation 100 years back. In 1920, we had to cancel the play because of the Spanish flu, and we do it in 22, and then we go in 1930 back to the full decade. So even now we think the next play will be in 2030. A lot of people say you have many American English-spoken audience. How can we change it? It's not possible for us to do it in English. So we have to do it to act in German. And we have an open air stage. It's very difficult. It's too much light for subtitles. We need a lot of power. So we have this old tradition with the textbook. Every actor, every man of the audience gets an English translation. it's sometimes difficult, even if it goes to the night. Suddenly you have no light, but I have not a better idea, and I don't like to make a big lines on the stage. It's very hard, it's not really possible.
Thank you. We are almost out of time. I want to give each of you a chance if there are any last comments that you were really hoping to share that no one has asked yet. No? Okay. Well, I want to thank our audience for these really wonderful questions and your engagement and your attendance today. We do hope to post a recording of this webinar on the Holocaust Museum's YouTube channel. That should be available in the coming days. And we will share that information. But on behalf of the Washington National Cathedral and the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum and our two guests today, Peter Pettit and Christian Stückl, I want to just thank everyone for coming and for your engagement. And have a great day.